For this part, I would like to talk about the time when I went to the clinic, the dental clinic, to have my teeth checked, probably a few months ago. As I called the front desk in advance to book an appointment, the receptionist gave me detailed directions to get there, warning that the numbering on that particular street was a little bit tricky, and the place itself was somewhat difficult to locate. But when I arrived at the destination as told, I found out that it's not the clinic at all, it's a small restaurant. So I called the hotline again to ask for help, carefully recounting my prior conversation with the front desk. We went back and forth, which took quite a while since it's another person talking on the phone with me this time around, and she had to double check with the girl I had been talking with earlier to see if that girl had given me the correct address. Thankfully, in the end, they realized that they had confused the number of the alley and the number of the establishment itself. To tell you the truth, initially I felt pretty disappointed because I had been running around searching high and low for the location. But as they sincerely apologized for the mistake and offered to reimburse me for the car ride, I decided to let it go. Let me tell you about a popular industrial zone in my hometown, which I once passed by on my way to the beach. To tell you the truth, I already forgot the name of the area, but I remember that it is located on the outskirts of town, next to a gas station. On that occasion, I was visiting my parents who still live in my hometown, and we decided to travel to the well-known beach named Simpson. When we pulled in the gas station to fill the tank, I got out to get some fresh air. Shockingly, I found the sky that day the darkest shade of gray, as it was covered with smoke coming out in massive quantities from a row of factories nearby. So I immediately got back into the car, and only then that my mom told me that there was a newly built industrial zone in the region. Looking around, I could see that people were all wearing masks to avoid breathing in the dangerous chemicals and emissions. What's more, the vegetables grown in the few gardens within walking distance from the location were all dead. I felt a lump in my throat when I imagined how badly the health and well-being of the miserable men and women who live there must have been impacted by this kind of pollution. After that time, I tried to avoid that round at all costs. For this part, I'm going to discuss one of the best developed periods in my country's history, the Chun Dynasty, which lasted from the 11th to the 13th century, if I'm not mistaken. To be honest, history is really not my strong suit, nor was I paying attention in history class when I was in school, but this chapter stood out in my memory as I recall learning that Vietnam during those 200 years was incredibly blessed with prosperity. Virtually every sector, from agriculture to commerce, was thriving thanks to the pro-business policies of the government, while public's well-being was well taken care of by both central and local authorities. This is one of the details that stuck with me after all those years in school. Truth be told, I would like to read more books and research papers written by acclaimed historians to truly grasp the magnitude of the nation's overall developments in that era. Besides, as far as I know, the Trần dynasty has quite a big cultural impact on later administrations. So I'm interested in digging into that field too. I believe that the more I learn, the better I can understand, hence appreciate the great achievements of my ancestors. A brilliant individual with a ton of innovative ideas that I would like to talk about is Elon Musk, the owner and CEO of several well-known companies in the world, including Tesla and SpaceX. Oh, and he happens to be the richest man on earth right now, too. I started following him when I was working at a news outlet covering the technology and business sectors. And I have to say, he is such an interesting character. As a matter of fact, Musk is a strong advocate of colonizing Mars so that humankind could migrate there once Earth is no longer inhabitable. And when it comes to tactics to turn the red planet into a livable environment, he has probably the most intriguing initiatives, one of which is to nuke the planet to bring the temperature way up. I vividly remember the occasion when he first expressed this shocking approach of his. It was during an interview with Stephen Colbert, a famous American talk show host. At the time, both the interviewer and the audience were laughing so hard, thinking that Musk was just kidding. But looking at his face, they came to realize that he was being dead serious. I'm no scientist, so I couldn't comment on whether or not his method is feasible, but given that no experts prior to him had raised this particular idea, I suspect that it's deemed controversial, at least. For this part, I would like to vent about an animated movie named Monkey King, which was a highly anticipated title on Netflix at the time of its release. If I remember correctly, I watched it a few months ago when I came across a review that praised the film generously. As it piqued my interest, I decided to give it a go, and as usual, I watched it alone in my room because I wanted to immerse myself completely in the story without any distraction. And to be fair, Monkey King was kind of entertaining with beautiful illustration and clever jokes sprinkled here and there. But I have to say that I was pretty underwhelmed, actually, because the plot line was so weak, I couldn't grasp the moral of the story at all. In addition, this particular movie is based on a famous Chinese novel that I happen to love and know very well. So I couldn't help but compare the adaptation to the original work. And to be frank, Monkey King not only fell short of my expectations, but also didn't do justice to the wonderful tale of the legendary Monkey King. I would like to talk about the time I went to a high-end restaurant for my birthday this year. The truth is, by that time, it had been quite a while since I last had a proper birthday celebration. That's why I decided to go all out for a fancy dinner. And as my friends always raved about this popular eatery, I thought that it's time I gave it a visit. What happened was, when my sister and I arrived at the place, there were so few waiters, I thought it was about to close, even though it's just 8 p.m. As we settled in at our table and ordered, we got out our phones to take some pictures to commemorate the special occasion. Yet, after we took what felt like hundreds of photos, our food still hadn't arrived yet. I called a waiter over to ask for an update, but all he said was, "Our dishes are coming soon." So we patiently waited for another 30 minutes. Eventually, when our meal was nowhere to be found, we told each other that we had had enough and stood up to leave. By the time we were already at the front door, the manager offered an insincere apology without giving any explanation as to why we never got fed. I was beside myself with rage with the way the situation was handled by the service provider. I couldn't believe such a famous restaurant could give such terrible customer service. I want to share with you the story when I got the news I had gotten into one of the most prestigious universities in Vietnam. To give you a little bit of context, back in the day, the college entrance exam in my country was notoriously hard. So to prepare for it, I had spent an overwhelming proportion of my summer that year. And to tell you the truth, as I was not that brilliant as a high school student, my parents were really worried I wouldn't be able to get into a good institution. Therefore, on the day that the results were supposed to come in, they decided to stay home with me, even though it was a weekday. All my family members gathered around the home computer, anxiously waiting for the important email. Finally, when I opened the incoming letter and we saw that I had passed with flying colors, we all broke down in tears. It's such a critical milestone in my life because it proved that if I set my mind to it, I could accomplish anything. I would like to tell you about the time I reported to the building management where I live about the excessive noises made by one of my neighbors. I live in an upscale apartment building, and generally I'm quite happy with the friendly environment and the high living standards there. As a matter of fact, the residents are mostly married couples with kids, and they are often pretty considerate of others. However, on that particular Friday evening, when I was in bed about to go to sleep, I suddenly heard a loud thump, followed by the sound of children running around and laughing. At first, I tried to ignore it as I believed it would stop soon, given that it's already 11 p.m. Unfortunately, as time went by, the situation got even worse, and I could hear little boys and girls chasing each other and shouting frantically. When I couldn't take it anymore, I decided to call the front desk to tell them about the commotion. A security guard was immediately dispatched to my floor to investigate. It turns out my next door neighbors were having a birthday party for their son, and they hadn't noticed how late it was. The dedicated guard called me right after his investigation, informing me that he had asked the family to wrap things up. I thanked him for his service and went back to bed, pleased that I finally found peace. To tell you the truth, it's really hard for me to admit that I am wrong about just anything, but I'm gonna come clean about purchase I deeply regret it. It was a state-of-the-art camera I bought when I was at my first job. Not only did it look beautiful with its bright red leather cover, it also boasted all the popular features such as blurring the background or auto-enhancing the quality of the photos taken. Back in the day, I convinced myself that it's an absolute necessity to take high-quality pictures. In fact, I had to save up for several months in order to get my hands on the gadget because of its hefty price tag. However, as time went by, I gradually realized that I had made a huge mistake. To be fair, the camera worked well, but it was so difficult to understand all these sophisticated functions that it has, since I'm not a professional photographer. Oh, how I wish I could go back in time and tell my younger self and dissuade my younger self from buying this piece of equipment. In all honesty, I'm proud to say that I'm a highly punctual person, and I make a point of trying to arrive to any event as early as possible. However, there was this one time when I was 1 hour late to a meeting with a new client. If my memory serves me right, it happened a few months ago when I was collaborating with a small technology company on a marketing campaign for their new software products. On that day, we were supposed to meet at 9 a.m. to discuss the strategies we wanted to deploy. And since their office was pretty close to my place, it typically took me only 10 minutes to get there. So on that occasion, I was so sure that I could leave at 8:30 and still got plenty of time before the discussion. Unfortunately, there was a car accident on the road that day, resulting in a terrible traffic jam right at the crossroads. As a result, I was completely stuck in traffic for about an hour. I had to call in to explain the situation and tell everyone to start without me. I felt absolutely horrible about the episode and swore from that moment on I would always leave home at least 1 hour just to be on the safe side. I would love to tell you about a typical pole dancing class of mine. As a matter of fact, I have been practicing this sport for 1.5 years now, but I would still feel incredibly exhausted after every single session. Last Saturday, I decided to visit a small studio I have just found out about, even though it was a bit further away from my place than the more well-known establishment that I usually go to. What I liked about this new place was that it has a silicone-coated pole, which would make it easier for me to hold my position. I booked the space for 2 hours, and at first I tried out all the elaborate moves I learned from my talented instructors, and then I tried to string them all together to make a nice routine. I was having so much fun, I completely forgot about the time, and at the end, I was so big I couldn't walk. So I had to stay there for a while to catch my breath before I could get up and go home.